Hi class, you've had a number of readings and activities that have gotten us to a pretty fair state of knowledge with respect to cardiac anatomy, the heart structure. Let's talk a little bit now about cardiac physiology, heart function. And I'll take you through a brief set of slides that I'll speak to, and hopefully at the end we'll come to a good understanding of what it is that the heart does. I guess basically at its simplest, the purpose of the heart is to simply pump out blood for distribution throughout the rest of the body, so that the blood that's circulating through your muscles, through your brain, through all of your internal organs, is blood that's distributed from the heart. And therefore, the singular function of the heart is really quite simple. It's to pump out blood. And if we were going to define a measure of cardiac function, it would simply be the cardiac output. If the function of the heart is to pump out blood, a measure of the heart's function is, quite simply, how much blood does it pump out? And that's the cardiac output. But of course, the heart pumps out much more blood over the course of a full day than it does during a single hour, and much more during a single hour than it does during a single minute. So in order to understand from patient to patient or from case to case what we're really talking about, we always refer to the cardiac output as the volume of blood the heart pumps out per minute. And we express this in milliliters per minute. So at its simplest, the basic function of the heart is to pump out blood. We measure that by cardiac output, and we express it in terms of milliliters per minute. The normal average cardiac output for an adult human being is said to be about 5 liters per minute, which equates to about 5,000 milliliters per minute, there being 1,000 milliliters per liter. So the normal cardiac output is generally described as about 5,000 milliliters per minute. But for this lesson unit, I'm going to use the figure of almost 5,000. I'm going to say that the cardiac output is 4,900 milliliters per minute. And that's just to make the mathematical calculations that we'll be looking at seem a bit simpler. Cardiac output, the volume of blood the heart pumps each minute, which we said is about 4,900 milliliters per minute, is really determined by two things. The heart rate, that is, how fast does the heart beat, and the stroke volume, how much blood does the heart pump out each time it beats. Simply, if the heart pumped out 1 milliliter every time it beats, and it beats 10 times a minute, cardiac output would then be 10 milliliters per minute. 1 milliliter with each beat, 10 beats a minute, therefore 10 milliliters per minute. And physiologists usually express these kinds of concepts by writing a mathematical formula. And you can see that here in red. It might look a little intimidating when you first see it, but no fear, this is really quite simple. And what it says is the cardiac output, the amount of blood the heart pumps each minute, is determined by the heart rate, how many times the heart beats per minute, and the stroke volume, how many milliliters the heart pumps each time it beats. And in our example, we could have filled in cardiac output is 10 if heart rate is 10 and stroke volume is 1. Mathematically speaking, I would read this expression as saying cardiac output is the product of heart rate times stroke volume, the concept of product indicating that we're multiplying. Let's put some real numbers to that. Let's assume that your pulse rate is 70 beats per minute. And as you can see here in this picture, we're taking that pulse with the radial artery. This would be a radial pulse rate, but you'll learn that later on perhaps in a course in human anatomy, or even in this course when we actually get to the anatomy of the circulatory system. Let's assume that the heart pumps 70 milliliters each time it beats. So pulse rate or heart rate is 70 beats per minute. Cardiac output is 70 milliliters per beat. What is 70 milliliters? Well, if you've been to the pharmacy or the deli and you see those little shot-sized bottles of 5-hour energy, that's about a 60 milliliter bottle. So just a little bit more than that would be the volume of blood that your heart pumps every time it beats. And if your heart beats 70 times per minute, that means that our cardiac output would be 4,900 milliliters per minute, because the cardiac output, as we see in this equation, equals the heart rate times the stroke volume. We've determined that the average heart rate for an individual is around 70 beats per minute. The average stroke volume per individual is about 70 milliliters per beat. 70 times 70 equals 4,900. And you can work out that math on your own. So that would be the normal resting heart rate and the normal resting stroke volume for a normal average adult at rest. For example, sitting in front of a computer terminal as you're doing right now. If we increase the heart rate to 100 beats per minute, and let's say that happens when you begin to climb a flight of steps, or when you begin to run chasing your dog down the street, or a hat that's blown off in the wind, we know that when we exert ourselves, our heart rate goes up. Why does the heart rate go up? Well, in certain times of exertion, our muscles need more blood. We need to provide more oxygen pickup in the lungs. We need to increase the amount of blood flowing through the circulatory system, increase the amount of blood flowing through the lungs, increase the amount of blood flowing to muscles. And the way we increase the amount of blood flowing is to simply increase the cardiac output. If your heart rate goes up 30 beats, from 70 beats per minute to 100 beats per minute, your cardiac output goes up from 4,900 milliliters per minute to 7,000 milliliters per minute. And this simple little mathematical expression, this intimidating mathematical formula that we first looked at, really simply tells us how that works. 100 times 70 equals 7,000. We, of course, can increase the stroke volume of the heart. If the heart rate had increased to 100, and let's say it does when you're climbing a flight of steps, and your stroke volume increases to 100, and let's say it does when you're climbing a flight of steps, your cardiac output would actually go up to 10,000 milliliters per minute. Now that's more than double the resting cardiac output of 4,900 milliliters per minute, but we haven't nearly doubled either the heart rate or the stroke volume. So very small changes in heart rate or stroke volume can lead to relatively large changes in cardiac output because it's a product. We're multiplying, not adding the effect. What might increase your stroke volume to 100 milliliters per beat? Well, a stronger heart contraction can do that. The stronger the heart contraction, the more blood will be ejected from the heart. Or we can also increase the stroke volume if we increase the amount of blood returning to the heart. After all, how much blood does the heart have in it to pump out? Well, the answer is only as much as it received from the veins. And interestingly, because the veins of our body thread through and between our muscles, anytime you contract a muscle, you squeeze a vein. And if you squeeze a vein, that blood returns to the heart. That increases a capacity called the venous return, and that puts more blood in the heart to be coming out as stroke volume. It's very, very complicated. We'll learn more about this when we study the vascular system.